Good Erev Shabbos. It's Parsha Zachor, the Shabbos. We are on the runway to Purim. And every year I'd like to remind us all, adults and children alike, of the importance of the minhag of wearing costumes and masks, as it were, on Purim. For many of us, we see it as a cute thing for children, but as we get older and more sophisticated, we find it somewhat embarrassing or shameful to dress up, or just ridiculous, unnecessary, and not very adult-like. Indeed, the minhag of wearing some type of costume or mask is an old minhag. It is not 1,000 or 2,000 years old, but it is certainly an old minhag. And I would like to offer you 4 basic approaches to why this is a meaningful minhag, and remind us and challenge us all to come on shul to Purim with costume. So number 1, very simply, wearing a costume makes it a more festive occasion. It's nothing more and nothing less than that. And who wouldn't want to create a more festive occasion on a holiday which is celebrating great salvation for Klal Yisrael? So let's make it festive. Let's make it more joyous. Come in costume and help create an atmosphere of joy and festivities for us all. Number 2, the Meiri famously says that the mitzvah on Purim to drink Adelo Yada Bein Ar Haman Levarach Mordechai. So this notion of not knowing the difference between Ar Haman, cursed is Haman, and Baruch Mordechai requires some level of inebriation. However, the Meiri and others try to walk that back. And the Meiri says, Ad shelo yachsar davar. Person should drink until they feel a sense of contentment, which is a lot less than drinking until you don't know the difference between Ar Haman and Baruch Mordechai. But what does this mean to feel a sense of contentment? What it means, I believe, is that when a person feels content, they feel no necessity to put on airs for other people. They are free just to be me. And so sometimes we can apply this to the notion of wearing masks and costumes. Sometimes when we are costumed, we feel a sense of freedom. I can just be me. Ironically and paradoxically, by not being me, by dressing up, I can feel free to be me because I feel that nobody's looking at me, nobody's judging me, nobody knows who I am, and I can just be me. And each one of us, just as ourselves, living out the reflection of the neshama that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into us, living the truest version of who we are, that's really what we need and we want, to be content. Just to feel okay to be me. And so the second reason for wearing the costume is to create that sense of nachas ruach, just to feel peace and content. Because when we feel that way, when we feel just content to be who we are, we can more likely be the truest, most spiritual, most profound, most kind-hearted people, the truest version of who we are. I'm reminded of a line that somebody once said, when I was 20, I cared what people thought about me. When I was 40, I decided I no longer care what people think about me. And when I was 60, I realized nobody had ever been looking at me the entire time. In other words, we often go through life and we feel we live our lives in opposition, in engagement with others. How are people going to perceive what I'm doing? But at the end of the day, the most powerful way to live, the most productive way to live, is just to be me. And so wearing the mask, paradoxically covering me up, sometimes gives me the freedom to feel content, just to be myself. Ad shelo yachsar bo davar. And there's another idea which is well known, and that is wearing the masks and the costumes reflects the very theme of the Megillah, the very theme of Purim. Everybody in the Megillah, or many characters, many protagonists in our story, are hidden. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is hidden, not mentioned in the Megillah. Esther's identity is hidden from Achashverosh. Mordechai uncovers a plot, people that are hidden. Mordechai was hidden from Haman, in that Haman didn't know that Mordechai was the Ish Asher Melech Hafetz Bikaro. Achashverosh allows Haman to wreak havoc on the Jewish people, and it's sort of like Haman is the face of it, but Haman is really just hiding his master Achashverosh, who allowed him to do it. The Chazal tell us that the Jewish people came to these parties in Shushan and divested themselves of their identity. That is hiding themselves when you try to blend in and just be like everybody else. So the theme of the Megillah is about hiding one's identity. And in certain ways it was bad, and in certain ways it was good. So the wearing of the masks and wearing of the costumes is nothing more or less than just celebrating the holiday by reflecting and projecting one of the most essential themes, whether it's Hester Panim of Hashem, or it's Hester of Esther from Achashverosh, or Mordechai, etc., etc. Okay. There's one more approach that I'd like to share, and that is that there's a mitzvah on Purim to give tzedakah. Not any old type of mitzvah of tzedakah, but a very powerful and all-encompassing type of tzedakah. See, when it comes to Purim, we have the notion that you're supposed to give whoever extends their hand, poshet yad, whoever extends their hand, you give them tzedakah. During the course of the year, a person maybe wants to be very frugal with their, very circumspect with their tzedakah giving, and they want to make sure that every single dime and penny that they give is going to a person or an organization or whoever that is worthwhile. But on Purim, everybody deserves, everybody who comes deserves to be given to. Kol poshet yad, whoever extends their hand, just give them. Don't start looking up and down and sizing them up. They extend their hand, they're giving. It's not easy for a person to ask for tzedakah. It is embarrassing. It is sometimes people experience shame. Not that they should, if they need the money, then they have to extend their hand. But it is part of the human condition that people do feel sometimes a sense of embarrassment and maybe even shame for being in a position that they have to extend their hand. It's a loss of independence, a loss of sense of self for some people. So Purim is a time where everybody, where we all know that there's a mitzvah to give everyone. And so the Aniyim come out in full force on Purim. And this is why we're wearing costumes on Purim, in order to protect the dignity of those who have to extend their hand. Because if we're all wearing costumes, then we don't know who's the giver and who's the taker and who is whom. Indeed, the Rambam says that one of the higher levels of tzedakah is when the recipient doesn't know the identity of the giver, and the giver doesn't know the identity of the recipient. So if we're all wearing masks, if we're all wearing costumes on Purim, then we create an environment and a context that increases human dignity. And this, after all, is also one of the great themes of Purim. To be able to confer dignity on one another, to show ahavat, love to one another, to create achdus amongst Klal Yisrael. This is the pathway to salvation, to Geula. So if Purim represents migalos legeula, from exile to redemption, at least in part, that we were redeemed from a terrible, terrible persecution, then perhaps when we celebrate Purim and we don the costumes, we remind ourselves of our work that we must do in order to bring about our ultimate salvation, our full and complete Geula. And that comes through reversing the sentiments of resentment and anger and hatred and sinas chinam that sometimes we might fall prey to in dealing and feeling about one another. So I end where I started off. I want to encourage all of us to come to Megillah reading, come in costume, make it a festive experience, come and create an environment of dignity, of ahava, of love. Come on Purim and come and wear the costume in an effort to further the opportunity for everyone to feel peace and contentment. Shelo yachsar bo davar. And in doing so, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us with a joyous Purim and a speedy and witnessing the Bias HaMashiach, the full and complete salvation speedily in our day. A good Shabbos and a Freilich and Purim Tov.